Well, it's a good thing. In yesterday's video, we were wondering how long it would have taken for Blizzard to pull back on their original planned changes for this patch on a few of these outlier specs like Frost DK or Arcane Mage. Well, it's good to know it took them about 4 hours to push some updates on the patch. So we have for today some hotfixes for the release of this patch. They are already, of course, live in game, and we can start with the first one just in case players get the wrong idea about this one, which is that for Hunter, for Beast Mastery Hunter, kill command is nerfed by 35%, which is a big number, right? Well, this was expected to begin with. It's not that Blizzard just decided to gut by a third the damage of one of your highest damaging abilities. Just for the record, in case you were wondering, this log coming practically today after the nerfs is the post nerf kill command, which is still a third of your damage. And the entire point why the nerf of kill command happened is because Hunter already received a bunch of changes in this patch, which was buffing significantly Beast Mastery Hunter in AoE, but also bringing back, or partially bringing back, the single target damage they used to have before Blizzard nerfed Basilisk Collar by basically 60%. So this change, this nerf to kill command was practically missed by Blizzard in the original 11.0.5 tuning, and they sort of put it in last minute with this hotfix. This doesn't mean Beast Mastery Hunter is being nerfed this patch. This patch will still be an overall buff, larger buff for AoE, and still a decent increase in single target for Beast Mastery. But the other of the changes that take definitely more of a space in this hotfix are the ones for Death Knight, right? We have talked about this yesterday. This was planned to be some 8+% damage increase in single target for Frost Death Knight, and of course there was some confusion because Frost Death Knight was already one of the better performers in the raid. Before this patch landed in Mythic Plus, it was already the most popular of the DPS specs in Mythic Plus, and even looking at their overall damage last week before the changes, Frost DK was again also one of the strongest, or the strongest of the specs. So what happened is a hotfix which is nerfing Deathbringer, but not just Deathbringer. You have a nerf to Reaper's Mark, Exterminate, and Wave of Souls, which are already by default a reasonable part of a Death Knight's damage, even in Mythic Plus. Reaper's Mark and everything attached to Reaper's Mark is already your second strongest damaging ability, but also nerfs that go beyond just nerfing Deathbringer, because Obliterate gets a 6% nerf, Breath of Sindragosa gets a 10% nerf, and Icy Death Torrent also gets a 12% nerf. So Obliterate is nerf, Icy Death Torrent is nerfed, Breath of Sindragosa is nerfed, and then Reaper's Mark as well is getting nerfed. So not just Deathbringer, which was what was being buffed in the patch, but the rest of Frost. Now you can see here from the preliminary results of the changes, the damage of Frost before the patch, and then the damage of Frost after they get buffed and then nerfed with this hotfix. So the result after all of this roller coaster is that you are barely even touched, slightly even touched in your default breath build, which is the build that Frost DK is practically default to in Mythic Plus. Practically every dungeon, every situation is just a breath build as a Deathbringer Death Knight, and then in the raid, again, even in the raid, practically every single boss, every single damage type situation, AoE, single target, whatever, is still breath. So actually this hotfix doesn't do anything, doesn't actually nerf you. Funnily enough, it actually does nerf the builds that were already weaker than the breath build, because the shattering build, as you can see, which is basically just the Frost build that doesn't go down here but goes down here, is nerfed by more. And then the Rider version, the Rider of the Apocalypse version of this build also gets nerfed more than the Breath build, which is funny because the Breath build is already the stronger one for Death Knight. And even though you have some nerfs specific to Deathbringer, these are still not enough to make Rider of the Apocalypse any better or any viable compared to Deathbringer anyways. Now, what also raised some eyebrows about these changes is the fact that, yes, sure, Frost is getting nerfed as they deserved, but But what about this? You know, why is Blood Death Knight catching strays when Blizzard is trying to nerf Deathbringer for Frost? You know, Deathbringer wasn't OP for Blood DK. Blood DK didn't have the same amount of, for example, presence in the meta compared to Frost. And maybe you could say, well, sure, but, you know, Deathbringer was still problematic because it gave Blood DK just so much more damage than any other tank, right? But this was last week before the nerfs, and Blood DK playing Deathbringer doesn't do that much more damage than the other tanks, really. So that's kind of the unique part about these changes, the fact that Blood as well gets nerfed alongside Frost, even though Blood DK didn't really need any of these nerfs. The last one of the changes, of course, could have only gone to Arcane Mage. Now, Arcane Mage gets a similar treatment to Frost, a bit more focused though, on their hero talent. Just like Frost, they get big focuses on the Sunfury nerfs, and then also generic spec nerfs. Arcane Blast and Arcane Barrage are being nerfed for Arcane. Now, unlike Frost DK, which practically from one patch to the next, you can't even see them changing, right? You can only see the hero talents swapping around, but in terms of builds, in terms of playstyle, it stays more or less the same. When it comes to Arcane, there is a significant difference. You know, if you scroll through the results right after the reset and right after these changes, you might be noticing something different about all of these mages on the bosses in Mythic. If we switch to Mythic Plus, you might also be seeing something different. And what you're seeing different is that now 90% maybe of the mages in Mythic Plus and 95% of the mages in the raid now are Spellslinger instead of Sunfury. That's the main change, because this was not the case when we go to 11.0. So when we go to like yesterday. And yesterday, in the raid, these were the Arcane Mages, right? There was only Sunfury. There was no sight anywhere of Spellslinger, but now, into the new patch, and after these changes, is what has been happening, because many of these nerfs are hitting specifically Sunfury. This one was a much smaller nerf for Spellslinger, and then the base nerfs to Arcane Blast and Arcane Barrage hitting both. But this resulted in Spellslinger for Mage practically reaching critical mass, because don't forget that these are hotfixes, sure. But before the hotfixes, you also had the whole changes of the actual patch. And the whole changes of the actual patch were already nerfing Sunfury. And the changes of the actual patch were already buffing Spellslinger. So when you add the base changes of the patch, which were a buff to Spellslinger, on top of the nerfs of the hotfix, which are just more nerfs to Sunfury, this is the result. The result, as you can see from these preliminary sims, is that now Spellslinger has gone, for example, from being almost 180,000 DPS below Sunfury in single target to being practically even. Sunfury is now behind Spellslinger also in 3-target AoE situations, in 5-target AoE situations, even in single target priority funnel damage on 5 targets, and then you can see the total changes of the buffs in terms of percentage. Sunfury was nerfed by 1%, whereas Spellslinger was buffed by 12%. And also you can see the change from 11.0.5 yesterday, so before this hotfix, and 11.0.5 today, after the hotfix. And what this creates is that now Spellslinger, whether it is single target or AoE, is now the to-go build. Most of the changes going from single target to AoE are practically a handful of extra AoE talents for your build, but for the most part you just stay Spellslinger now in most content, and that's what you are likely to be seeing out of Arcane Mage in terms of this new patch. And the funny thing is that after all of this roller coaster, after all of this, first you get nerfed and then you get buffed in the patch, which is weird because the specs were already doing super well, and then Blizzard pushes in a hotfix to nerf them again, actually from practically their situation 1 week ago, before any of these changes were live, before any of these changes could have impacted them. From 1 week ago to now, Arcane Mage is basically losing 1% damage, and Frost DK is losing less than that. The only difference is that Arcane will now be doing that less than 1% damage difference as a different hero talent. But in terms of actual overall power of the spec, then practically nothing changed for Frost and nothing changed for Arcane. But these were the three main changes for today for Beast Mastery, for Arcane, and for Frost. Of course, it's not that we can just already see the effects of these results in 11.0.5 because, you know, we haven't gotten that many logs in just a couple of days. I guess you can start, of course, you can start to see the benefits of Beast Mastery Hunter getting their single target back, for example, as well as the Arcane Mages realizing they have to go away from Sun Fury into Spellslinger, and also a few other of the changes we haven't touched on today, like, for example, the new version of Elemental Shaman, or even if we go into healing, the current meme situation of the fact that Resto Shaman has an entire button that doesn't work. Ascendance right now is not healing for Resto Shaman, but, you know, specifically talking about the hot fixes, that's what we have gotten for today. Beast Mastery, Arcane, and Frost Death Knight, which, as we mentioned, in the long run for Arcane and Beast Mastery haven't actually changed much about their performance. Same goes for Beast Mastery, where the nerf was expected with the patch notes and just slipped through for less than a day before it got fixed. But for today, on this Wednesday, on reset day in EU as well, we are now done with the PSAs about the hot fixes being pushed in this reset. So we're now, of course, leaving each other on this reset day. Thanks, of course, as usual, guys, for watching the video, together with, of course, other ways to support completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these pointless things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, I don't know why, but I have good vibes for today, so we're gonna be streaming tonight, doing some raiding, doing some keys. I'm feeling pretty chill.